In 1999, a mysterious disappearance occurred in the United States that baffles people to this day. An 11-year-old girl was left alone for 90 seconds and literally vanished into thin air. Years later, police would find a dollar bill on which a message, written in the girl's name, said, "I'm alive." In this video, we have gathered all available information about what happened to Miquelle Biggs. The disappearance. On January 2nd, 1999, in the American city of Mesa, Arizona, two sisters, 11-year-old Miquelle and 9-year-old Kimber, were playing near their home. It was a cool evening, and dusk was just beginning to fall. Despite it being the middle of winter, Arizona is a warm southern state, so Miquelle had brought her bicycle and was riding alongside her sister. At some point, the girls thought they heard the sound of an approaching ice cream truck. These trucks are fitted with speakers that play music to announce their arrival to children. Miquelle hurried home to ask her mother for change for ice cream and then returned outside. However, the ice cream truck was nowhere to be seen, so the girls decided to wait. After a little while, Kimber started to feel cold. She told her sister she was running home to grab a jacket and would be right back. When she returned, Miquelle was gone. Her bicycle lay on the pavement, its wheels still spinning. Next to it were the 2 quarters the girl had gotten for the ice cream. Kimber went back home and told her mother that Miquelle had disappeared. At that moment, neither she nor her mother could even imagine that something might have happened to the girl. The mother thought Miquelle had gone to visit the neighbors, with whom the family was on friendly terms. However, the girl wasn't there, and her mother realized something terrible might have happened to her daughter. She immediately contacted the police. It's worth noting that the police response was incredibly swift. Within 30 minutes, a helicopter was in the air. Law enforcement officers were stopping all suspicious vehicles, and they were canvassing the surrounding houses. That same day, volunteers from the girls' school handed out and posted flyers with her photograph. Later, these photos would appear in shop windows and on billboards all across Arizona. The police searched dumpsters and inspected hundreds of homes. The case was assigned to detectives Butch Gates and Jerry Gassey. The officers questioned every ice cream vendor in the state and could not confirm that any of them had been in that area at the time of the disappearance. Detectives reconstructed the timeline of events and came to a chilling conclusion. The girl had vanished in just 90 seconds. The spinning bicycle wheel was the very fact that confirmed the abduction had happened extremely quickly. Search dogs, brought in to aid the investigation, couldn't pick up the girl's scent. When they finally did, they only took a few steps toward the road. This is because a dog can only follow a person's scent if the missing person left on foot. This only strengthened the police's primary theory. The girl had been forced into a vehicle and driven away, all in a matter of seconds. The situation was complicated by a complete lack of witnesses. Even though the girls were playing on a street lined with houses, none of the neighbors had seen them that evening. Later, a tip came in that a man had attempted to kidnap 2 girls, aged 10 and 11, directly from their school. Police investigated a possible link to Miquelle's disappearance, as she was 11, but the incident turned out to be a prank. With fewer and fewer leads, the police began to work through standard theories. In any case of a missing child, the parents and other relatives are always investigated. Given that Miquelle's mother was home at the time of the abduction, investigators turned their attention to the girl's father, Darian Biggs. From the very beginning, no one truly believed he was involved. Why would a father kidnap his own daughter, especially in such a manner, in the middle of the street, during the brief window when his other daughter ran home? However, it soon became clear that the man had lied about his alibi. During the first interrogation, he claimed he was at work at the time of Miquelle's abduction, which turned out to be false. In reality, he was spending time with his mistress. It got even more interesting. The man failed a lie detector test. His wife admitted she knew about his affairs. Darian himself had told her a month before the incident. She had been considering a divorce. Despite the false alibi, the police eventually stopped considering the father a suspect. Even in the case of a divorce, his wife had no plans to prevent him from seeing the children. He simply had no motive. Furthermore, detectives acknowledged that the lie detector results could have been affected by the emotional state of a father whose daughter had just been kidnapped. He might have even been blaming himself, thinking that if he had been home with his family, the tragedy could have been avoided. Detectives also tracked Darian's movements that evening and determined he simply wouldn't have had time to hide a body. He had arrived home very quickly after his wife called to report their daughter's disappearance. Detective Gassy later stated that Miquelle was likely not acquainted with her abductor. If it had been her father, she wouldn't have dropped her bicycle and the coins on the ground. The girl had tried to escape from a stranger but simply didn't have enough time. Dead ends and new suspects. During the investigation, the police regularly encountered leads that went nowhere. An anonymous man called detectives to report that Miquelle's body was at an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. Police scoured the area but found nothing. Later, they received an email in which an anonymous person claimed to be the one who had kidnapped the girl. He was tracked down rather quickly, and a SWAT team was sent to his home in Phoenix. The sender turned out to be a 12-year-old boy who had decided to play a prank. Meanwhile, the investigation reached a dead end, and police began to explore even the most outlandish theories. They combed through 35 abandoned gold mines in the area and even questioned nearly 500 psychics who claimed they could help the investigation. Unsurprisingly, this led to nothing. A single witness was found who had seen a copper-colored Jeep shortly before Miquelle's abduction. The driver was quickly located and turned out to be innocent. After that, the police began to lose hope of finding the girl, as they were left with virtually no leads. This continued until September 27, 1999, when another shocking event shook the quiet county. A woman living near the Biggs family returned home and walked into her kitchen to find a middle-aged man with his pants unzipped. He didn't say a word, instead lunging at the woman, choking her, and sexually assaulting her. Afterward, the attacker set the house on fire and left. He apparently assumed his victim was dead, but the woman survived. Her neck was broken, but she managed to reach a phone and call for help. With her last bit of strength, she whispered to the paramedics, "Miquelle Biggs, the girl who disappeared. He took her. You have to save her." The whole town was on high alert again. Events unfolded rapidly. The police got to work and arrested the attacker. He was identified as D. Blaylock. The man was a known alcoholic in the area who lived with his wife and 3 children. His house was just 2 blocks away from the Biggs home. D had been one of the first to volunteer to help in the search for Miquelle and had willingly let the police search his house, but not the trailer in his backyard. For the trailer, he demanded a warrant. You have to admit, such behavior is extremely strange. A man with a bad reputation volunteers to help find a missing girl, allows police to search his home without question, and then suddenly forbids them from looking inside his trailer. From that point on, Blaylock became the primary suspect. Although his wife provided him with an alibi for the time of Miquelle's abduction, no one believed her story. It was highly likely she was simply afraid of her husband. Detectives began digging into Blaylock's past and discovered he had been convicted 3 times for assault and molestation, as well as for the kidnapping of minors. He had only been released from prison in 1995, and at the time, none of the neighbors had any idea what kind of monster had moved in next door. Several times a week, Miquelle attended private piano lessons with a neighbor who lived across the street from Blaylock's house. This suggested that the man might have known the girl long before her disappearance. After Blaylock's arrest for the assault on the woman, police returned to his property with a search warrant, planning to examine the trailer he had previously kept them out of. but they were met with disappointment. The trailer had vanished without a trace. This was a devastating blow for Miquelle's parents. They were convinced their daughter was in there, dead or alive, but it was gone, and the police were unable to track its location. For the assault on the woman on September 27, 1999, Blaylock was sentenced to 15.5 years in prison. He adamantly denied any involvement in Miquelle's disappearance. For the attack on his neighbor and the atrocities he committed against her, 15 years in prison could be considered a lenient sentence by U.S. standards. A confession to kidnapping an 11-year-old girl, on the other hand, could have sent him straight to the electric chair. The parents couldn't accept that their only hope for the truth, his confession, was slipping away. They wrote him a letter. No one expected a reply, but his response caught the parents by surprise. The criminal wrote that the conversation was too personal and invited the parents to visit him in prison. At that moment, hope was rekindled in the parents' hearts, but they were in for a huge disappointment. Sitting across from the criminal, the father asked if he had anything to do with his daughter's disappearance. Blaylock simply replied that he did not. The conversation continued in this vein for a few more minutes, after which the criminal just got up and left with the guards. It all seemed as if he were merely taunting the parents, giving them false hope, only to crush it while looking them in the eyes. For a sadist like Blaylock, the suffering of others can bring unparalleled pleasure. It seems this was the very reason he arranged the meeting with the grief-stricken parents. Afterward, Miquelle's father admitted he was convinced of Blaylock's guilt, stating, "I was sitting a few feet away from the guy who killed my daughter, and I couldn't do anything about it." At that point, even the most steadfast observers lost hope that the case would ever be solved. Absolutely everyone believed that no new leads would ever emerge. Years later, they would realize they were wrong. But more on that in a bit. The mysterious dollar bill. On the 5th anniversary of Miquelle's disappearance, her parents buried an empty casket, saying their final goodbyes to their daughter. In the intervening time, their marriage had fallen apart, they had moved away, and they reluctantly spoke with journalists. Until 2018, the case went cold. The police simply had nothing to work with. But then, unexpectedly, an event occurred that sent shockwaves across America. On March 14, 2018, a dollar bill turned up at a police station in the city of Neenah, Wisconsin. On it, in a clumsy handwriting, was written, "My name is Miquelle Biggs, kidnapped from Mesa. I'm alive." The bill was discovered by a local resident who collected coins and dollar bills in a jar. He was the one who found this particular dollar and reported it to the police. The investigation was immediately reopened. Miquelle's mother traveled nearly 2,000 miles to look at the handwriting and determine if the message was truly written by her daughter. Other relatives also came to the station, but they all gave a discouraging assessment. The handwriting looked nothing like Miquelle's, and her first name was misspelled. The mother suggested the bill might be someone's extremely cruel prank. The other relatives supported this theory. Despite this, police tried to trace the bill's path. Unfortunately, this proved to be nearly impossible. Paper money changes hands so many times that finding the author of the note was not feasible. Experts who examined the bill suggested the writing was done by an adult male attempting to imitate a child's handwriting. Despite all this, the message on the paper bill seems highly suspicious. Could it have been someone's prank? The chances that the police and relatives would find out about the bill were extremely slim. It could have circulated for years or ended up in a bank vault, and no one would have paid it any attention. The fact that it fell into the hands of a concerned citizen who reported it to the police is more of a miracle than an inevitability. As for the handwriting, one obvious theory cannot be dismissed. Miquelle might have been writing in a hurry, afraid of being caught. Furthermore, She had been missing for 19 years before the bill appeared. Assuming someone held her captive, did they give her any opportunity to write during that time? After 19 years without practice, a person's handwriting could change dramatically.
There is another question to which no one knows the answer. How long ago was this message written? The bill could have been in circulation for years, or it could have appeared shortly before its discovery. It's worth remembering, Bill.Mikelle, who was due to be released from prison in 2017. Perhaps this was a cruel prank of his doing. One only has to recall how he tortured the unfortunate parents by giving them false hope. We may never know the answers to these questions. Or perhaps, this case will once again shake the world with unexpected details. Kimber, who was the last person to see her older sister before the abduction, still cannot forget that terrifying January evening. For a long time, she blamed herself for going home to get her jacket. But now she realizes, against an adult abductor, she would have been helpless. Kimber is raising a young son, whom she constantly tells about his aunt Miquelle. She calls her the angel who watches over him. Like the rest of her family, she is certain Bill.Mikelle kidnapped Miquelle. But without evidence, it can never be proven, unless the criminal himself decides to confess, just to inflict another blow on the missing girl's family. What do you think? Is there any hope that the message on the dollar bill was written by Miquelle herself and that she is still alive? Subscribe to the channel to listen to these real and scary stories. Sometimes these stories end well, but more often badly. It's disturbing.